So I've been gone for a hot minute, and I developed a bunch of strategies, partly out of spite. But spite is not a good motivator. So I feel like I should share these strats with everybody. Protal has already ripped a 3854, and so that means I think I contributed at least a minute of time save, possibly more, depending. So I feel like it's only fair that I share it with everybody else. So I'm going to show every strategy that I discovered in the week that I stopped publicly playing Talos too. So here we go. So the first thing is Base Camp East Stucco. So your checkpoint gets right about here when you're passing through here, and if we can warp back there instead of having to run all the way back from the Lost Lab, that would be ideal. So all we need to do is avoid any checkpoints on the way and get stuck inside of a wall. So I'll show you how to do that using flings. So the first thing is, instead of walking through the front of the lab over here, we can instead go to this rock wall, set up negative 100, 100, which are the fling positions that we'll use for the future, and fling through the wall here. From here, you want to clump until you reach about on top of the stairs so that you can clip back and bounce. And then from here, you have to nail this, otherwise you've ruined the strategy, but you have to do the PMIC on this terminal, and then walk into this corner next to this box. I don't know how visible that is on screen. That's pretty okay. From here, you want to do, you want to do the classic QT up here like this, and you get stuck in the wall. And by getting stuck in the wall here, we actually warp back. I don't know if you can see that. I ripped the schematic, and then when I'm about at the base of the stairs, I actually close the thing. And we've not only skipped the cutscene, but also the walk back from the lab by getting stuck like that. And all it took is clipping out of bounds a little bit and avoiding the checkpoints. That saves probably 10 to 15 seconds on its own. With execution, we'll see how much time that actually saves, but it seems like it's a pretty good strat on its face already. For my next trick, I have another stucco warp. This one involves also not hitting a bunch of checkpoints, but it's kind of way easier to do it, at least in my opinion. It's got the same sort of pitfalls where if you enter the terminal without entering photo mode, you won't be able to warp back because it sets your checkpoint improperly. But it still saves about the same amount of time, 10, 15 seconds, maybe more. The one thing is, the earlier you can clip out of bounds, the better. We actually have a lot of room here. Like, you can walk all the way down here and never hit a checkpoint. So you can pick this position for like an easy way out of bounds. I'm going to try picking the hard one just to prove that it is indeed possible. You want to wedge up against the metal pipe here. QT 100, 100 for your position offsets for the fling. And then, I messed that up clearly. There we go. If you don't get lodged into the terrain, which I still don't understand why that happens. Yeah, clearly this is not an excellent trick. There we go. So if you get the right sort of positioning, you can end up out of bounds from here. You can clump over. I prefer this because using the corner is more effective. These walls have a propensity of forcing you back out if you clip into them, but a corner you are shoved 40% deeper because you can leverage the fact that photo mode positioning does not care about normalization or whatever. You can clip back in bounds. We still haven't hit a checkpoint. So from here, you want to hit the PMIC on this terminal, run over to this corner, do the photo fling back into this corner, and now you're stuck. From here, it's literally press forward. I don't know how much of this is visible in the recording. Probably not a lot. That's fine. But basically, you can just literally never have to change your direction by adjusting your mouse in any way. For safety's sake, you can click on the terminal to move your mouse around. And then 1, 2, 3. Schematic 108. If you do it with approximately that time, you'll enter the purple at about 170%. I think 210 is like the limit of what's acceptable for getting into the elevator, but 170 is the safest, so that's what I always picked for my timing. From here, you skip this, and now we'll enter the group call wall inside the purple elevator, which is a strat that I used to pull off, but I had to walk all the way back instead of stucco warping. So no matter what, this saves again a boatload of time, and it also implements ELL GCS in any run that wasn't implementing it before, because it was really hard to see when you had a terminal on your screen. So yeah, that's a good one. Apparently, I'm actually kind of surprised. I'm surprised how effective these are. But we're not done with Stucco Warps yet, folks. That's right. I ruined Bruce, or rather I saved it, honestly. Instead of having to have a conversation with somebody, which is contingent on whether or not there's actually going to be an NPC there and whether or not it's Yakut the fucking bastard, you can instead just do a Stucco Warp back here, and the execution is actually pretty easy on this one. So while you're doing a PMIC into this capsule... Nice. I messed it up. We'll do it right, I promise. We're doing it live. There she blows. While you're entering here, this is as good a time as any to set up your fling positioning, which is 0, 100 for your X and your Y. So once you've done that, now we have photo mode inside of the capsule. Use any photo mode key that's not something that's mapped to something in the menu. So I'm using numpad 8 for this. And then you can unphoto mode and rephoto mode once you're under the ground, like you normally do in Bruce. F10, F10, and then break out using escape. And you can do, I choose to do a diagonal clump sequence here because it's actually very good for what we're looking for. The difficulty comes in the fact that you have to press 2 keys in the interim instead of just the one when you're doing forward clumps, but hey, whatever. Once you make it over here, now we just have to warp back, so make sure to PMIC on this terminal again. I messed it up. That's fine. Well, for demonstration's sake, assume that I didn't just do that. There we go. So I'm going to get warped to a bad position. That's fine, whatever. So from here, you can do the warp through the door here. And if I had done that correctly and I didn't get budgied by the terminal, I would have gotten warped up to where the capsule is. And in the fade out, you can press the Noema design and enter the capsule at 150 pretty safely. So that is a Bruce that is extremely safe in comparison to the options that we had before concerning conversation and the like. And it's available for everybody. Like if you mess up by pressing escape while doing the clump sequence down to the lab, there's no issue with that anymore because you're just doing clumping. You're no longer doing clumping with convic. So the only downside is if you mess up the terminal, then you get warped back to the terminal. But that's just a hang up that's going to exist with all these Stucco warps. This one, you know, depending on who implemented what, I know Proto probably is saving like 30, 40 seconds on this one. So like, hell yeah, dude. But that should be it for most of the Stucco stuff. Is there anything else that... Oh yeah, no, there's a bunch of stuff that we still have to talk about. Give me a sec. So in M2, I had decided, at least for myself, that the terminal strat for this was faster. I don't know if this is still the case, but basically you just go through the conversation with Alcatraz and you go over here and you rip the terminal and go. And based on the timings that I did, where you just have to, instead of having to clump all the way around and come all the way back in, if you had the opportunity to walk through here, this is better because you don't have to do clumps. And clumps, at least my clumps, are about 92% the speed of walking speed. So like, you know, avoiding clumps is better. So if I was able to go around this way, it would be 10 seconds faster for what I was doing. If you're doing a terminal strat, for the record, which by the way is just a matter of consistency. I don't know whether or not it's faster or slower. Timing may vary. But the strategy that I came up with for this was if you do the terminal, and by the way, you can mess up this PMIC, that's totally fine. Although I didn't pre-bake the position, so let me do that real quick. So for M2, I have -100, 0. You enter this here, and then you can do a double fling through this door, and then you walk all the way around here. You can jump over that barrier, I just apparently couldn't. But this is like super old, like when we used to do these sorts of strats. Walk through here. And yeah, no, this is exactly what we had, except we've added a couple of flings into the mix. I guess this is really only applicable if you're using terminal stuff at the moment, because I think there's some trigger or other that messes up with Alcatraz. I would not be surprised. And even if it wasn't, like, there's not a super convenient time to set up your photo mode if you're doing Alcatraz convex. So this is really only applicable if you're doing the terminal strategies for warp, for terminal warp. Convict warp doesn't really care about this, but you can walk through the door and go the way that's intended instead of going and hooking all the way around. So that saves, you know, a decent amount of time for me, but it seems like if you're going to go the other route, it doesn't save any time at all to do this. And then we're back on this shit again. Welcome back to Mega 3. Mega 3 has a couple of strategies, some obvious, some not. I'll first show you the fact that, yes, if you cut this corner sharp enough and you set up this position to be 100-100, you can do a single fling through this door. Come on. Here we go. You can do a single fling, and then you can clump down to... You can even clump down to the iron bars over here and just run to the elevator and restart checkpoint. And that skips an elevator. And that's far more consistent than whatever I was trying to do before. So that's already an upgrade. As for stuff that's in the promo pit, one small thing on execution and one big thing in terms of resetting checkpoint properly. So what we used to do for the strategy over here is, you know, you'd go this way, and then you'd climb up the vertical wall and you'd go around the building. But going around the building is actually particularly slow. So let me give you a quick demo here just to show you the Shandango. You just click. This is all just going to be the thing, but normally what we do is we jump over here and then over here and then over here, and then you'd make it to the pin. And it's actually a pretty long journey. And so the thing that I discovered that, you know, because we're actually like decent at clumping nowadays, you can instead do something along these lines, where instead you clump up and around for the pin here. And again, this is another execution based trick, but I think this one saves like 8 seconds if you do it good. The downside is if you mess it up, you lose so much time because you're spending all your time clumping instead of a relatively easy running route. So yeah, I'd say absolutely free if you're decent at clumping, and if not, like, it's a pass. The other thing that's going on in Promo Pit is just like something that kind of should have been obvious, at least to me, but I figured it out, you know, too late. Basically what you used to do is we would do a PMIC and then go backwards until the cutscene activated, and then from here you'd be able to run back. But you can just restart checkpoint. So no need to PMIC on this lever here. You just skip these 3 cutscenes in tow. We'll be able to skip this 3rd cutscene at turn point. Okay. And then on Act 4, the moment that the screen turns white, you rip a restart checkpoint. And that means you can instantly start running towards the elevator instead of having to wait through being woozy and being in the wrong position. Like, saves a bunch of time as well for basically free. And that's pretty much it for the strategies that I had attempted to implement. There's a bunch of weird nefarious stuff that I'm still trying to work on in the form of stucco warping Mega 1, which is like the last bastion of things that are possible, honestly, without a major sequence break. I mean, there's also a bunch of small things too. The tower elevator at the very end of the game, you can restart checkpoint at the top of it to go through the elevator, which is, you know, it saves like half a second, but, you know, free time save is free time save. I've started implementing Utopia, which may or may not save half a second instead of Dystopia. Bunch of really small things that don't really matter, but I decided to mention them anyway. But otherwise, yeah, so I I came up with a bunch of strategies. This is not a good tutorial, but I hope at least documenting them is useful for folks out there.